tried to silence me, but my voice remained. They saw me like I was nothing to keep.
The sun was soft that day. The sky was clear, too clear to hint that tragedy was near. Little Ruth sat at the back seat of their old Corolla, her hands holding a crumpled math notebook, her feet barely touching the floor. Her father drove, smiling at the road ahead. Her mother, radiant and kind, kept turning to remind Ruth to finish the jollof rice in her lunchbox. Laughter filled the car. "Daddy, can I sing the song I made at school today?" "Sing, my angel," her mother encouraged. "Let the world hear your voice." Ruth began to hum. Her voice floated through the car like a breeze, delicate and full of innocence. Then, out of nowhere, a loud crash. Screaming metal, spinning world, shattered glass slicing through time. There was darkness everywhere. Ruth woke up to nothing. No light. No shapes. Just voices. She cried. And the overwhelming silence that followed. She reached out, blindly. "Mummy?" No response. "Daddy?" The nurse beside her wept quietly as she checked Ruth's vitals. 2 beds had been emptied earlier that morning. Her parents were gone forever. The funeral was small. Ruth couldn't see the faces around her, but she could feel them cold, distant. Nobody held her close. No one explained. She only heard whispers. "Poor child, she is blind. What will happen to her now? She's the daughter of the second wife." After the burial, she was handed over to Madame Stella, her father's first wife. A woman whose heart was as hard as the wooden spoon she used to stir her soup. From the moment Ruth entered her house, she knew love would never live there. The house smelled of kerosene and old secrets. Ruth was given a mat in the corner, beside the dusty back door, where wind crept in through cracks in the wall. Madame Stella barely spoke to her, unless to give orders. "Wash those plates. Fetch water from the well. Cook the soup. Don't burn it." Blindness was never an excuse. Ruth, small and fragile, would grope her way across rough ground, barefoot, scraping her skin. Sometimes she fell. Sometimes she bled. But no one came to help. Not even Kenneth, Madame Stella's son, who mocked her, mimicking her helpless movements and laughing when she bumped into walls. She learned to cry silently. At night, when everyone ate, she would sit behind the kitchen door, hugging her knees, listening to their laughter. Her stomach twisted, not just from hunger but from the ache of being forgotten. When it became too much, Ruth would do the only thing she knew how: she would sing. Behind the house, under the big mango tree, she would sit in the dark and let her voice float into the night. Her songs were not loud, but they were deep. They were full of pain. Her voice trembled with longing, wrapped in the ache of memories she could never see again. And every time she sang, the stars above seemed to pause. Then came the day Kenneth forgot his boss's office key. Mr. Raymond, a powerful, impatient billionaire, was furious. He hated delays. With storming steps, he drove to Kenneth's house himself, planning to scold him face to face. But as he entered the gate, he stopped. There was a sound. A voice. It came from the backyard, soft, broken, and beautiful. The kind of voice that didn't sing for applause, but sang because it had no other way to survive. He turned the corner. Beside a worn water drum was a blind girl, her eyes closed, her skirt dusty, her hands holding a plastic bowl filled with soap suds. She was scrubbing quietly while singing as though the world wasn't listening. Her voice made the air stand still. Mr. Raymond felt his chest tighten. For a moment, he forgot his anger. He forgot the key. He forgot Kenneth. He simply stood there, staring at a girl who couldn't see him, but had unknowingly touched his soul. He took out his phone and recorded her. From that day on, whenever stress filled his heart, he would play her song. He didn't even know her name, but her voice became his therapy. One day, Mr. Raymond called Kenneth into his office. "That girl, the one who sang at your house that day. Who is she? I want to marry her." Kenneth nearly choked on his coffee. "My stepsister. Ruth? The blind one?" "Yes. Her voice, there's something divine about it. I want to make her my wife." Kenneth leaned forward, calculating. "You want to marry her just like that? Okay. But you'll have to pay money for exchange of her." "How much?" Mr. Raymond asked calmly. 30 million naira, Kenneth said, his lips curling into a greedy smile. Mr. Raymond didn't flinch. "Done," he said. That evening, Kenneth rushed home like someone who had just won the lottery. "Mama! Mama! We've hit jackpot. What is it now?" Mama Stella barked. "Boss wants to marry Ruth." She froze. "That blind girl? What kind of rich man wants to marry a liability?" He said 30 million. "That's what I charged him." Her eyes widened. 30 what? He laughed. Yes, he laughed. 30 million, Mama. We'll never suffer again. She looked around the house, the cracked ceiling, the broken fan, the constant lack. She had once cursed the day Ruth stepped into her life, but now, she saw gold. "But who will cook?" she whispered. "Who will scrub the floor? Who will fetch water?" Kenneth grabbed her shoulders. "Mama, we can pay people to do those things. This is our chance to leave this poverty." From behind the corridor, hidden in the shadows, Ruth stood still, her heart broken into 1,000 silent pieces. They were selling her. Not because they cared. Not because she deserved love. But because 30 million was worth more than her dignity. She covered her mouth to stop herself from crying aloud. Her knees gave way, and she knelt quietly in the darkness, alone. But deep within her, something stirred. She didn't know what tomorrow held. She didn't know who Mr. Raymond truly was. The evening wind blew gently as Ruth sat in the backyard, her blind eyes facing the sky, humming a soft tune while sorting dry beans in a wide tray. She always loved this hour, when the sun dipped low and the world felt quiet. Her hands moved slowly, feeling the beans, one by one. That was when she heard his steps, Kenneth. He walked up and stood silently for a few seconds. She could feel his presence. "Ruth," he said sharply. "Yes." Her voice was calm, but her heart tightened. "You need to prepare. Tomorrow morning, you're leaving." She paused. "Leaving? To where?" Kenneth shifted uncomfortably. "You're getting married." The beans in her hand slipped through her fingers and scattered onto the floor. "Married," she repeated in disbelief. "Yes," he replied. "To a man called Mr. Raymond." Ruth's throat tightened. Her chest rose and fell. "Who is he?" she whispered. He didn't say more. Didn't say he was a billionaire. Didn't say Ruth had been sold. Just walked away, leaving her heart shattered in the dirt. She sat there, still. Her hands trembled. Married, she thought. Just like that? Without knowing him. Without love. Without a choice. Her body was there. But her spirit felt ripped away. That night, Ruth couldn't sleep. She curled up on her worn mat in the corner of the room, tears soaking her pillow. What kind of man wants to marry a blind girl he has never met? Why did Kenneth say yes without asking me? She already knew it's because of money that sold her. The next day, she was told to bathe early. Mama Stella combed her hair gently, even wiped her face with scented water. Ruth said nothing. Her lips remained sealed. Her thoughts were louder than any voice. They've sold me, like a thing that's no longer useful to them. When the black car arrived to take her to her new life, Ruth stood by the roadside with a small bag in her hand, filled with nothing but a few pieces of clothing and the haunting weight of betrayal. Kenneth stood by the door. "Let's go." Ruth didn't move. Please, Ruth, Mama Stella whispered beside her. Don't make this harder than it already is. And with no strength left to fight, Ruth entered the car. Tears slid down her cheeks. But she didn't wipe them away. Because in her heart, she knew no one would notice. The car ride was long and cold, not because the air was cold, but because of the silence. Ruth sat quietly in the back seat, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her blind eyes were open, staring at nothing, yet feeling everything. She had been sold. Like an object. And not by strangers, but by her own family. Her stepmother's words echoed in her ears. This is our only chance to leave poverty behind. You should be grateful. Grateful? Grateful for being tossed away. Grateful for being handed over like cargo. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, ashamed. Not of her tears, but of her helplessness. When the car finally stopped, she felt the shift in the air. No shouting children, no smoky gutters, no barking dogs. The ground beneath her shoes was smooth marble. She could hear a fountain gurgling gently in the distance. Birds chirped softly, not like the noisy ones back home, but gentle ones that belonged in gardens. Someone opened the door. Kenneth's voice broke the silence. Come out. She stepped out. She didn't know where she was. She didn't even ask. Because what was the point? Her life was no longer hers. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Ruth wore a gown she had never seen, stood in a room she couldn't describe, and recited vows she barely understood. Mr. Raymond stood beside her, tall, silent, and composed. His voice, when he repeated his vows, was deep and steady. It didn't shake, it didn't rise, it felt distant. Ruth's hands trembled in his. She didn't cry, she wanted to. But what was the point? No one asked her what she wanted. No one cared if she was ready. No one explained why a rich billionaire with power, looks, and reputation would marry a poor, blind girl with no beauty to show. The thought haunted her. What did he want from her? Why her? Did he pity her? Was she just a charity case? Her heart sank deeper each time she imagined the answer. The vows echoed around her like a strange chant in an unfamiliar world. Ruth stood frozen, her blind eyes wide open but empty, staring into a future she didn't choose. Do you take this man to be your husband? The officiant asked. There was silence. A tear traced down her cheek. She heard her own voice, shaking, yes. But inside her mind, it was chaos. What exactly am I doing? She thought. Is this truly my wedding? What kind of bride doesn't even know the face of her groom? Her breath caught in her throat. She wore a luxurious white gown, silk, soft, expensive. Mr. Raymond had sent it to her the day before the wedding through Mr. Kenneth. Ruth had touched it gently, wondering how a man so powerful, so connected, so wealthy could possibly want her, a poor, blind girl with no beauty to show. There must be a hidden reason, something I don't know, she told herself. He's a billionaire. He could marry any woman he wants. Why me? The whispers of guests, the clicks of cameras, the scent of roses in the air, they all blurred together. Everyone saw a beautiful bride. No one saw the prisoner inside her heart. Even as she stood there, Ruth was trembling, lost in fear and doubt. Every voice around her faded, every cheer felt like thunder in her ears. On the other side of the altar, Mr. Raymond stood still, handsome, regal, but tense. His heart was pounding too. Is this right? He wondered. What does she see me as, a savior or a buyer? Will she ever understand why I chose her? But there was no turning back. The moment passed. The vows were made. The rings were exchanged. Applause filled the air. But no one noticed the sadness behind Ruth's smile. The grand hall had emptied. The music faded. The guests left with laughter and pictures, praising the billionaire's taste and grace. But in Ruth's heart, there was only silence. She sat in the back of the luxurious car, her hands folded tightly on her lap, her wedding gown too soft, too foreign. Her blind eyes stared ahead, but her mind was far away. The drive to Mr. Raymond's mansion felt eternal. He didn't say much. Just sat beside her, arms resting, fingers tapping the leather seat. When they reached the house, Raymond stepped out first. He paused, glanced at her. Then quietly turned to his head maid. "Miss Pat," he said, "take her inside. Show her to her room. Handle her gently." "Yes, sir," Miss Pat nodded with a soft smile. "This way, madam," Miss Pat said kindly. It felt strange in her ears. Ruth's heart dropped. "He left me." She expected something. A soft word. A kind hand. A sign of welcome. But there was none. Just silence. Miss Pat gently took her hand. "Come, dear," she said kindly. "Let me show you to your room." Ruth followed quietly, her shoes clicking lightly on the marble floor. She remembered Miss Pat's voice from before, calm, motherly. She had known the family long ago, even before Mr. Raymond's parents died in an accident. She had always cared deeply. But tonight, even Miss Pat's presence could not quiet the storm in Ruth's chest. They reached her room, big, too big for her. Everything smelled like lavender and luxury. She was shown where to freshen up. Dinner had been prepared. 1,000 lights lit the house, but Ruth's world remained dark. She sat on the bed and felt the soft velvet beneath her fingers. But it didn't feel like home. It felt like a stage. "What am I doing here?" she whispered to herself. "Is this really my life now? I'm a wife, but to who? A man I can't see, a future I can't trust, in a house I don't belong." That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake, staring into her darkness, her fingers clutching the sheets, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. And when the pain became too loud to bear, she sang. Very softly. A song of sorrow. A song of longing. Her voice, low and calm, filled the room like a ghost. It carried her pain like a lullaby. It wrapped her heart in its own warmth. What she didn't know was this: Mr. Raymond stood outside her door, listening. Her voice slipped through the wooden panels like a secret, curling through the hallway, climbing into his heart. And just like the first time, it calmed him. He slept well that night, not because of comfort, but because of her voice. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the massive windows. Ruth lay still, curled under the blanket, her hand on her chest. Her mind still refused to accept the reality: married. To a stranger. To a billionaire. A soft knock at the door. "Please come," she said softly. Mr. Raymond stepped in, wearing a light blue shirt, his hair slightly wet from the morning shower. His voice was calm, careful, like he was walking on glass. "Good morning, Ruth." She turned her head slightly toward the sound. "Good morning, sir." He winced. "Sir. You can call me Raymond, if that's okay. I came to say thank you for last night." Her brow folded in confusion. "Thank you?" "Yes, your voice. I heard you singing. I was passing by, it helped me sleep. You have a gift." She touched her throat self-consciously. "I didn't know anyone was listening." He sat on the edge of a chair, keeping his distance. "I hope you're comfortable. If there's anything you need, Miss Pat will help. The staff know you're my wife now. You'll be treated with the utmost respect, like a queen." Her lips tightened. Why was he being so kind? Why did he marry me? She forced herself to ask. "Why me?" He smiled faintly. "Because I fell in love." Liar, she wanted to say. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded quietly. Inside her heart, 1,000 thoughts screamed. He fell in love? With someone he never spoke to? Why didn't he ever visit or call before the wedding? Was it really love or something else? Why me? A blind girl with nothing? What if What if he plans to use me for rituals? She swallowed hard. Raymond stood and moved toward the door. I'll let you rest. But Ruth, he paused, you're safe here. Truly. And he left. She leaned back against the bed, confused, heart heavy. She wanted to believe him. But how do you trust a stranger who bought you like a thing? Still, somewhere deep in her soul, a small voice whispered, maybe, just maybe, there is more to this man than what I fear. She didn't know it yet, but her story had just begun. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Ruth sat by the tall glass window in her room, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on her lap. The soft rays of sunlight warmed her face. She couldn't see it, but she felt it. And in that warmth, she searched for a reason to believe this wasn't a prison in disguise. Her ears were sharp now, always listening. Servants moved softly downstairs. Plates clattered gently in the kitchen. A dog barked in the distance. Mr. Raymond had gone out early, his cologne still lingered faintly in the hallway. It had been 4 days since the wedding. And in all those days, she and Raymond had barely spoken more than a few careful sentences. He gave her space. Respectfully distant. Always asking through Miss Pat if she needed anything. And yet, every night, she sang. Not for anyone else. Just for herself. A way to survive. But she had no idea that every single night, Raymond paused outside her room, never knocking, never announcing himself, just listening. And sometimes, he stayed there long after her voice stopped, his head resting lightly against the door like a man haunted by something he couldn't name. In the morning, Miss Pat gently entered her room. Madam Ruth. Mr. Raymond requests your presence at the breakfast table. Ruth hesitated. She rarely ate with anyone. She was used to eating alone, when she was even allowed to eat at all. Miss Pat led her gently through the long corridor. The scent of roasted tomatoes and fried plantains teased her nose. Her stomach grumbled. At the table, Raymond stood as she entered. You look lovely, he said. Ruth wore a simple lilac gown Miss Pat had picked out for her. Her hair was braided neatly. Her face bare but glowing from the bath. Thank you, she said quietly, taking the seat opposite him. The table was long. Too long. He watched her hands fumble to find the spoon. She tried to feel her way around the plate quietly, not wanting to embarrass herself. Raymond stood suddenly, walked over, and knelt beside her. Let me help. She stiffened. I can do it, she whispered, her voice tight. But he gently placed his hand over hers, guiding her fingers to the cutlery, helping her understand the layout of her meal. No shame in needing help, he said softly. Her lips trembled. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not with pity. But with care. She turned her face slightly away, not wanting him to see the tear that slid silently down her cheek. Later that day, she was in the garden with Miss Pat when Raymond passed by. He was on the phone but paused when he saw her. She was sitting beneath the mango tree, humming. He ended the call. May I join you? She nodded slowly. They sat quietly. Is it always this quiet here? She asked. Raymond chuckled. It used to be. Until you came. She blushed slightly. He leaned closer, his voice low. The first time I heard your voice, something stirred inside me. Something I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. She turned her face slightly toward him. Her expression unreadable. I'm not saying this to flatter you, he continued. You didn't just sing, Ruth. You felt. You reminded me of something pure. Something real. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was home. Ruth's fingers curled slightly around the edge of the bench. Home, she repeated softly. Funny. I haven't felt that in years. There was silence again. He nodded, then gently said, Ruth. I've always wondered. If you feel comfortable, can you tell me what happened to your eyes? There was a long pause. A breeze passed through. Ruth exhaled, her voice shaky. It was an accident. The car, it was raining. My father was driving back from school with my mother and me. A truck lost control. They died instantly. I woke up, in the hospital. I couldn't see anything. Just darkness. I thought it was night, but the night never ended. Raymond swallowed. His heart clenched. I'm sorry, he said. No one deserves that kind of pain. Ruth tilted her face toward the breeze. I stopped crying after some time. Not because it stopped hurting, but because nobody was there to care. Raymond looked down. I understand more than you think. She turned slightly. What do you mean? My parents died too, he said quietly. An airplane crash. I was already an adult, running the business, but that kind of loss. It still hits like a child being orphaned. Their silence met in the middle, not as strangers this time, but as survivors. Raymond took a deep breath. We didn't get a chance to know each other before the wedding. I regret that. But if you'll let me, can I take you out on a real date? Ruth's lips parted in surprise. A date? Yes, he chuckled. Just the two of us. Like normal people. No pressure. No expectations. She hesitated, then smiled softly. Okay. And from that night, everything changed. Raymond began to call her every few hours. Voice calls. Video calls, though she couldn't see him, he wanted her to hear his smile. He would ask what she was eating, what song she was humming, how the breeze in the garden felt that day. He would bring her little surprises, a warm cup of cocoa on rainy nights, a blanket draped over her shoulders when she fell asleep on the couch, a note in Braille that simply said, I love you, and Ruth, for the first time in years, laughed. One morning, as the sunlight streamed through her room, Raymond knocked gently and stepped in. I want to try something, he said. She turned her head toward him, curious. I've been speaking to a few specialists, he continued. Ophthalmologist. Surgeons. There might be a chance to restore your sight. Ruth's breath caught. You want me to see again? She whispered. No, he said, stepping closer. I want you to choose if you want to. And if you do, I'll stand beside you through every second. Not because you need to be fixed, you're perfect as you are, but because you deserve every chance at joy. Her throat tightened. Her fingers trembled. In that moment, Ruth didn't feel blind. She felt seen. The next morning, Ruth sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Her heart pounded. For years, she had accepted the darkness. It was her world. But now there was a whisper of light. A fragile, terrifying hope. Raymond knocked gently, then entered. He could see the tension in her shoulders. The doctor is ready to see us, he said softly. Ruth stood. Us? He smiled. I promised I wouldn't let you do this alone. The drive to the private eye hospital was silent at first. Ruth pressed her palm against the window, feeling the vibration of the road beneath her fingertips. In her chest, her thoughts ran wild. What if it doesn't work? What if it does, and I can't handle what I see? What if I see myself, and I don't like who I've become? Raymond reached over and gently took her hand. You're not walking into this alone. No matter what happens, I'm here. Always. His voice was steady. Warm. A shelter in her storm. At the clinic, they met Dr. Ifani, an experienced ophthalmologist known across Africa for complex eye surgeries. His voice was calm, confident. Her blindness is from trauma, he explained after the first examination. There's significant damage, but not irreversible. There's a procedure we can attempt. It's delicate. The chances of success are fair, not guaranteed. Ruth's lips trembled. Will I see again? The doctor met her eyes, even though they were clouded and distant. Maybe. But even if your eyes can be healed, it's your heart that must be ready. Ruth's hands were cold. Raymond gently wrapped his coat over her shoulders. I want to try, she whispered. I want to try. Raymond smiled softly, proud of her strength. The surgery was scheduled. A week of tests followed, scans, blood work, nerve checks. Ruth remained brave through it all, though sometimes she wept quietly in the bathroom, afraid of being disappointed again. Raymond never left her side. He read to her at night, poetry, soft love stories, even the Bible when her anxiety became too much. He brought her her favorite foods, massaged her hands when they trembled, and held her when words failed. The night before the surgery, Ruth couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of her room, humming. Raymond came in and sat beside her. Your voice still calms me, he said. She turned to him. Do you think I'll see you after tomorrow? He took her hand. If you don't, I'll still be right here. If you do, I hope I'm half as beautiful as you imagine. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, tears ran down her cheeks, not from pain, the hospital but room from was hope. Silent, save for the steady beeping of the heart monitor beside Ruth's bed. The morning sun tried to peek through the blinds, its light casting a golden hue across her face. Dressed in a sterile gown, Ruth laid still, her hands clenched tightly over her abdomen. Raymond sat beside her, fingers laced with hers, his eyes never leaving her face. You're strong, he whispered. You've survived the darkest nights. This is just the next step. The door creaked open. Dr. Ifani entered, his expression calm and confident. Are you ready, Ruth? She nodded slowly, though her voice trembled. Yes. Raymond kissed her hand. I'll be here when you wake up. The air was cold, sterile, machines beeped rhythmically, nurses moved like shadows in the background. As the anesthesia took hold, Ruth whispered the only thing she could cling to. God, let me see what love looks like. Darkness swallowed her. Hours later, the scent of antiseptic filled the room when Ruth stirred. Her lashes fluttered beneath a bandage of gauze and cotton. She felt lightheaded, groggy. There was a distant hum of a monitor, and a familiar warmth. Raymond's hand. Ruth? His voice cracked. I'm here, she whispered hoarsely. You did great, he said, brushing his thumb over her hand. The surgery is over. She reached up slowly. Can I take off the bandages? Dr. Ifani stepped in. Let's do it gently. With careful fingers, he began to unwrap the layers covering her eyes. Each fold removed felt like peeling away years of fear, pain, and uncertainty. Her breath quickened. Easy, the doctor said softly. Open them, slowly. She did. At first, it was nothing but a blur of light, bright, overwhelming, undefined. Then, shadows. Shapes. A silhouette in front of her. Her lips trembled. Raymond. He leaned in, smiling, eyes filled with tears. Yes, my love. She blinked again, the image becoming clearer. She could see the shape of his face, the curve of his lips, the water glistening in his eyes. He was beautiful. A sob broke from her chest. I can see, she whispered. Raymond dropped to his knees, pulling her into a gentle embrace. You did it, he said. You're back. You're here. Tears fell freely from them both, for the pain, the waiting, the silent prayers, and the miracle now real before them. I've never seen anything more beautiful, she murmured, touching his face. And I've never felt so loved, he replied. Thank you, Raymond, she said. It was a quiet afternoon, the soft hum of the world outside blending with the warmth inside the house. Ruth had just finished a small practice session, her voice lingering in the air like a gentle breeze, when she noticed something unusual. Raymond, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the room, stood up, a guitar in hand. Ruth blinked, momentarily confused. She had never seen him play before. Raymond? She asked, her voice laced with curiosity. You play the guitar? He smiled, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. "I've been learning a few things. I thought I'd surprise you one day." Ruth's heart fluttered at the thought. She had always loved music, it had been her constant companion, the only thing that kept her from feeling truly alone. But now, with Raymond by her side, it felt like everything had come full circle. He strummed a few chords, the sound rich and warm, filling the room. Ruth could feel the vibrations in the air as the music began to take shape. Raymond's fingers danced on the strings, a melody that seemed to reach into her soul. With the first few notes, Ruth closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. The sound intertwined with her voice, and without thinking, she began to sing, her voice rising with the melody. It was as though they were one, the guitar and her voice flowing together effortlessly, a seamless harmony that spoke of connection, of something deeper than words could say. The music, the rhythm, the love, it all blended into a moment of perfect peace. When the last note lingered in the air, Ruth opened her eyes, her breath catching in her chest. The room was still, as if time itself had stopped. Raymond set the guitar down gently and walked toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. Ruth was still standing, her heart racing. "Raymond, that was beautiful. I didn't know you could play like that." Raymond stepped closer, his gaze intense. "There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Ruth." His voice was soft, but there was a sincerity in it that made her heart skip a beat. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. The moment felt suspended in time. His touch was warm, his fingers brushing softly against hers. The air between them felt charged, like an invisible thread connecting them. She could feel his love in every word, in every glance. He looked deep into her eyes, his expression tender and full of emotion. "I love you, Ruth," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I love you more than words can say. And I'll keep showing you, every day, how much you mean to me." Ruth felt the words sink into her heart, but it was the way he said them that made all the difference. There was no pretense, no hesitation, just pure, unfiltered love. For the first time since their marriage, Ruth didn't feel like a girl caught in an unfamiliar world. She felt cherished, adored, and most of all, loved. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, with Raymond holding her hand and looking at her with such tenderness, she felt something stir within her, hope, joy, and a sense of belonging she hadn't known she could have. Before she could say anything, Raymond leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss so soft, so full of affection, that Ruth melted into him. The kiss deepened, filled with everything unspoken, a promise of more to come. When they finally pulled apart, Raymond smiled softly, his eyes sparkling. "I'll keep loving you, Ruth. And I'll make sure you have everything you need to be the best version of yourself. You deserve that, and more." Ruth's heart swelled, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something she had almost forgotten, happiness. True happiness, the kind that comes from being seen and loved for who you are. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I'll make sure to show you every day how much I love you, too." Raymond chuckled softly. "You don't have to do anything, Ruth. Just be you. That's enough for me." And in that moment, as the world outside continued its busy rhythm, Ruth and Raymond stood together, wrapped in their love, knowing that this was only the beginning of a beautiful journey they would walk together.